Ethan Cole sat alone in the small control room of his outpost on Arrivos 4, staring at the blinking lights of the generators. The wind outside screamed across the frozen canyons, rattling the walls with a ferocity that made him pull his jacket tighter around his shoulders. For years he had lived in solitude here, the only human for hundreds of kilometers, maintaining the outpost systems to keep the colony lights running and the research data secure. It was a lonely life, but Ethan had grown used to it. He had grown used to the quiet, the emptiness, and the endless rhythm of the generators humming in the cold. That night, as he checked the external temperature monitors, a faint knocking sound echoed through the thick metal door. Ethan frowned. Few visitors ever reached his outpost. Mostly, he was just visited by drones delivering supplies or updates from the main colony. But this was different.
He set down his tablet and approached the viewport.
Through the frost-covered glass, he saw two shapes huddled together in the snow. One was small and thin, wrapped in tattered clothing, holding a bundle against her chest. Beside her was a child, shivering uncontrollably. Their skin had faint silver patterns glowing faintly in the storm's dim light. Unmistakably Vereen. Ethan hesitated. The Vereen were a proud and secretive species, often at odds with humans after the last skirmishes on Arrivos 4. But he couldn't just leave them there to die. He activated the airlock and opened the outer door. The bitter wind rushed in and the woman stumbled into the outpost, dragging her child behind her. "Please, don't send us out again," she whispered in broken English, her voice trembling. Her eyes were wide and fearful, but there was a quiet dignity in the way she held herself despite the cold and exhaustion. Ethan guided them inside and closed the door. He quickly stripped off their soaked outer layers and wrapped them in thermal blankets. The heater hissed as it tried to warm the small space, and the scent of ozone mixed with the metallic tang of the outpost. The child, barely conscious, clung to the woman's arm. Ethan realized how small he was, no more than 7 or 8 Earth years old. His silver patterns glimmered faintly under the dim lights, evidence of his alien heritage. Ethan moved closer, offering a small medical kit to help warm the child's extremities. "What is your name?" Ethan asked gently. "Sira," the woman said, her voice almost a whisper. "And Leo, my son." Ethan nodded. He understood their situation more than they knew. Many Vereen who remained after the war were cautious, hiding, avoiding humans entirely. For a mother to be traveling with her child alone across this frozen planet meant desperation. Sira explained slowly with broken English. They had been exiled from their village. Others had accused her of consorting with humans, an offense that carried harsh punishments. The child, half human, half Vereen, was born from forbidden love, a love that had no place in her society. She had been wandering ever since, trying to find safety in the empty stretches of Arrivos 4, until the blizzard had almost claimed them. Ethan listened in silence, carefully checking the child's vitals. Leo was extremely cold, but he still had a pulse. He prepared a hot drink, handing a small cup to Sira first. She drank it shakily, then passed it to Leo, holding him close to keep him warm. Ethan felt a strange tug at his heart. He had been alone here for years, and yet these strangers, this mother and her child, reminded him of something he had long forgotten. The warmth of connection. When the night deepened, Sira hesitated, then looked at Ethan with fear and hope mixed in her eyes. "If I warm your bed," she whispered, her voice shaking, "will you let us remain?" Ethan was startled. He could see the fear in her gaze. She was not asking for companionship in the way humans might think, but in a desperate plea for survival. A mother and child needed warmth, and she was offering what little she had in return. He shook his head gently. "You don't need to do that. You and your son can stay. Nothing is owed. I will not turn you away." Sira's eyes welled with tears, but she nodded. She settled with Leo near the heater, letting the warmth seep into their frozen bodies. Ethan sat across the room, checking the generator monitors again. Outside, the storm continued its relentless howl, but inside, the outpost was quieter now, filled with the soft sounds of alien breathing and the faint hum of machines. Hours passed. Ethan found himself watching the child sleep, noticing the way his small chest rose and fell, the faint glow of his skin patterns flickering in time with his breathing. There was a fragile innocence about Leo that reminded Ethan of the children in old family photos he kept in his quarters, back on Earth. He wondered what the boy's life would have been like if The war hadn't driven them apart. Morning came slowly, with pale light filtering through frost-covered windows. Ethan prepared a small breakfast, careful not to wake the pair. Sierra stirred, the child still asleep in her arms. She glanced at Ethan, giving him a quiet smile of gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply. Words were not enough to express the relief of being safe, if only for a night. Days passed. The storm finally receded, leaving the frozen landscape sparkling under the weak sun. Sierra and Leo began to adjust to life in the small outpost. Leo, curious and bright, explored the corridors carefully, asking questions about the blinking lights and the humming machines. Ethan taught him simple repairs, guiding his small hands to tighten screws and connect circuits. He was careful not to overburden the boy, letting him discover the joy of creation one small task at a time. Sierra, meanwhile, helped around the station, learning quickly. She cooked simple meals, cleaned the floors, and sang lullabies in her alien language, her voice carrying through the quiet corridors in a gentle melody. Ethan listened, captivated by the softness in her voice, a sound that seemed to bring life to the cold steel walls. During these days, Ethan began to notice small changes in himself. The loneliness that had been a constant companion for years began to fade. He laughed quietly at Leo's curiosity, marveling at the boy's quick mind and gentle heart. He shared stories of humans and their strange customs, and in return, Sierra told stories of the Vereen, of forests with trees that glowed at night and rivers that sang. He realized how much knowledge and beauty existed in the universe beyond his small outpost. One evening, while monitoring the generator, Ethan heard a soft knock at the door. Sierra and Leo had been resting, and he wasn't expecting anyone. He opened it to find a small drone hovering, sending a signal from the main colony. The message was clear. Humans were still wary of Vereen presence in the area. Any alien detected outside official zones would be forcibly returned or detained. Ethan's heart sank. He realized the fragility of their situation. Sierra and Leo were safe for now, but if the authorities came, they would have nowhere to go. He guided them to the maintenance tunnels, a series of old corridors that ran under the outpost. It was cold and cramped, but it was safe from detection. He watched them settle in the dim light of the tunnels, the child clutching his mother tightly. "You risk your life for us?" Sierra whispered, her voice echoing softly. Ethan shook his head, smiling faintly. "No, I am doing what is right. You remind me what it means to be human." The night stretched on. Outside, the patrols passed, unaware of the hidden family in the tunnels. Inside, the outpost grew colder as the storm had damaged some heating units. Frost formed along the walls, and the chill crept into every room. Ethan worked to restore the systems, but he could feel the cold seeping into his bones. Sierra, noticing his discomfort, stepped closer. "Let me warm you," she said softly, pressing her hands against his shoulders. He felt the faint glow of her skin patterns, warmth radiating from her small frame. The gesture was not intimate in a human sense, but sacred among her people, a promise of life and protection. Ethan understood then that her first plea had been a request of trust, of connection, of shared survival. That night they huddled together, a human and two Vereen, sharing warmth, sharing hope. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the outpost, life had returned. The once lonely corridors now echoed with quiet breathing, soft laughter, and the fragile warmth of family. Ethan realized he would never be alone again, not while they were here. The world outside remained harsh and unforgiving, but inside, something beautiful had begun. A bond between species, a testament to courage, compassion, and the simple power of human, and alien, kindness. For Ethan, Sierra, and Leo, that night was only the beginning. The next morning, the sun barely rose above the frozen horizon, casting a pale light across the outpost. The storm had passed, but the world remained harsh. Frost glittered like tiny diamonds on the metal walls, and the wind still whistled through the canyon gaps, though not as violently as before. Ethan moved quietly through the corridors, checking the generator systems. Some had been damaged by the storm, but he could restore them. Sierra and Leo were still asleep in the maintenance tunnels, their breathing steady and calm. Ethan felt a pang of responsibility. Their lives depended on him now. He had given them shelter, warmth, and safety, at least for the moment, but the colony authorities would not ignore alien presence for long. Humans and Vereen had a fragile peace on Erebos 4, but it was a peace built on distrust and fear. A mother and her child wandering alone could draw attention quickly. As he worked, he heard a faint humming outside the outpost. He paused, listening carefully. It was subtle, almost mechanical, but it was enough to make him tense. He moved to a window and scanned the snowy plateau below. A small reconnaissance drone hovered in the distance, scanning for life forms. Ethan's jaw tightened. They were still monitoring the area, still suspicious. He returned to the tunnels and gently shook Sierra awake. "We have to be careful," he said softly. "Humans are sending patrols. We need to stay hidden." Sierra's eyes widened, but she nodded. She gathered Leo in her arms, his small face pressed against her chest. "We will survive," she whispered. Her voice carried determination, but also fear. Ethan admired her strength. She had survived the exile, the storm, and now the threat of patrols, all while protecting her child. Ethan quickly planned a route. The tunnels beneath the outpost were old and partially collapsed in places, but they provided cover. He had mapped them years ago while inspecting old mining shafts. They led far beneath the surface where no patrols could detect them. Carefully, he led Sierra and Leo through the narrow corridors, checking corners and listening for any sign of approaching danger. Hours passed as they navigated the tunnels. The darkness was oppressive, but the small glow of Leo's skin patterns provided just enough light to guide them. Ethan felt a strange bond forming with the child. Leo was brave, curious, and intelligent. Despite the fear, he asked questions about machines, about humans, and even about Ethan himself. Each question reminded Ethan of how much innocence and hope remained in the universe, even after war and suffering. Finally, they reached a small cavern deep underground. The walls were lined with ice, but it was sheltered from the outside world. Ethan set up a temporary heater using a portable generator. Sierra helped him adjust the settings, learning quickly. Together, they managed to create a small, safe space where they could rest and plan their next steps. That night, as the cavern grew quiet, Ethan and Sierra shared a moment of reflection. Sierra's glowing patterns shimmered softly, illuminating the cavern in a warm, gentle light. Ethan realized how extraordinary her species was. They had survived countless hardships, and yet she remained compassionate and resilient. "You saved us," Sierra said quietly. "I do not know how to thank you." Ethan shook his head. "No thanks needed. You remind me why we fight to protect life and all life. Humans, Virine, everyone. There is value in protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Sierra smiled faintly, touched by his words. She pressed her hand to his shoulder in a gesture of trust and gratitude. Ethan felt the warmth radiate through him, a reminder that connection could survive even the coldest, most hostile environments. Leo curled beside them, exhausted but safe, trusting Ethan as much as his mother did. The next few days were tense. Ethan scavenged for supplies, repaired damaged heating units, and kept the outpost functioning while remaining hidden from colony patrols. Sierra and Leo learned quickly, helping where they could. Leo enjoyed tinkering with machines, his small hands surprisingly skilled, while Sierra prepared meals from limited rations and shared stories of Virine culture. The small space grew warm not only with heaters but with laughter and companionship. One evening, Ethan monitored the communications again. The patrol drones were still searching, but their focus seemed elsewhere for the moment. He realized, however, that it was only a matter of time before someone would notice the hidden family. He had to find a more permanent solution. "Ethan," Sierra said softly, her voice carrying concern, "how long can we stay here? If humans find us..." She didn't finish the sentence, but the fear was clear. "We will find a way," Ethan replied firmly. "I promise. You and Leo are safe as long as I am here. We will not let them harm you." That night, as frost crept along the cavern walls, the temperature dropped sharply. Ethan worked on reinforcing the heaters, but they could only do so much. Sierra noticed his discomfort and, without hesitation, stepped close. She pressed her glowing body against him, sharing warmth. Ethan felt the energy of her species flowing gently, calming his aching muscles and the cold biting his skin. The gesture was sacred among Virine, a way of showing trust and offering life. He understood the meaning fully now. Leo snuggled close, his small hand resting on Ethan's arm. Ethan realized that they were no longer just strangers in need of help. They had become a unit, a family bound by survival and trust. The night passed slowly, but for the first time in years, Ethan felt truly alive. The world outside was still harsh, but inside there was hope. Days turned into weeks. Patrols occasionally passed near the outpost, but Ethan's clever camouflage in the hidden tunnels kept them safe. Sierra and Leo adapted to the routines of the outpost, helping where they could and learning the systems Ethan maintained. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Ethan also began documenting their experiences. He recorded the child's progress, Sierra's cultural knowledge, and the subtle differences between human and Verine physiology. The work reminded him why humanity reached for the star, to learn, to understand, and to protect life beyond their own kind. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow across the ice, Sierra spoke quietly. "Ethan, you have given us more than survival. You have given us hope. I cannot thank you enough." Ethan smiled, looking at the mother and child he had saved. "Hope is not something you can give or take. It is something you protect, and you have reminded me that it is worth protecting." The air outside grew colder, frost biting through the outpost walls, but inside, their small home glowed with warmth. Sierra, Leo, and Ethan sat together, sharing stories, warmth, and quiet laughter. The outpost, once lonely and silent, had become a sanctuary, a place where two species, once divided by war, had learned to coexist, trust, and care for one another. Weeks later, the colony authorities seemed to lose interest, moving their patrols elsewhere. Ethan knew the danger was not gone, but for now they had a reprieve. He looked at Sierra and Leo and realized that everything had changed that night when he had opened the door to the blizzard. What began as an act of simple kindness had grown into something extraordinary, a bond between human and Verine, a small family formed not by law or tradition but by courage, compassion, and the willingness to protect life against all odds. Ethan worked tirelessly, improving the outpost systems, making it a place that could withstand storms and patrols alike. Sierra continued to teach Leo, share stories, and care for the outpost, and Leo grew stronger, curious, and confident, his laughter echoing through the corridors and reminding Ethan of the simple beauty of life. The cold world outside had not changed, but inside, warmth persisted. And in that warmth, they had found something no storm, no patrol, and no prejudice could take away: family, trust, and hope for the future. As the stars shone bright over Erebos 4 that night, Ethan realized that the universe was not just a cold expanse of ice and danger. It was a place where humanity could rise, not through conquest but through courage, compassion, and the simple choice to protect life. He looked at Sierra and Leo, his heart full, knowing that their bond had changed him forever, and for the first time in years he slept peacefully, surrounded by life, warmth, and the fragile but enduring promise of tomorrow.